Hello and welcome back. I'm RJ Kerr, and this is Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a D&D adventure in real time from start to finish, from ideation to the actual finished product. So today we are going to continue with our map for the Berg. We're kind of in the home stretch here, and we've been doing this for several sessions, and it takes a little time to do these maps in real time, although it goes faster kind of once you get in the groove of it. But today we should be finishing that up, specifically the mine level of the Berg, our adventure site, our dungeon. And if we've got some time, if time permitting, we'll dig into starting to fill out some of the final rooms in the Berg, both the fortress level and the mine level, in terms of populating them with interesting things, perhaps traps, that kind of stuff. And then we will build out from there. So, without any further ado, why don't I go ahead and share my screen? Again, we're working in Krita today to start, although I imagine that's not going to take the whole time. And we'll move back to Notion as we need to. So, right now, we last time we went through, and this is our mine level, and we very quickly sketched out the lines for the various walls. We put in the lines, the more organic lines for our mine tunnels here. We did a quick audit for loops and different connections and places and ways that the characters can more easily navigate the various sections of our mine level here. We put in a couple secret doors, and theoretically, we could just pop in the shadow here now and have a good basic structure for this, just like we did on the fortress level, where we just kind of finished out the details and then jumped in to knock out our mine level here. That being said, let's do a quick look at the sketch layer, and yeah, we need to put our corresponding spot for our mine shaft here, which was what? How big? 3 by 3 grid? Okay, cool. So we'll make sure we add that in. We do various line work. And then after we put in the shadow, I think I want to take a crack at tossing in some gas fissures. If you think back to our original venture here in our Notion outline, we talked about there being this plague and infection. We have this patches of chlorine green gas, infectious of inhaled, that we wanted to put throughout the complex. And so I think that where we're going to start with that is we're going to pop that into certain segments here in the mine level that maybe create some barriers or some hazard spots that kind of break up some of the loops here. So places that the characters can physically pass through, but perhaps might be dangerous to do so. The idea being that since they're being hunted down here by that pack of ghouls, that we that they might end up in situations where, for example, they're chased down this way. If we put a fissure here, they either get stuck in the dead end or they've got to run through this fissure of gas. To that end, I think the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that we probably need to beef up that ghoul encounter a little bit, make that something that is a little more dangerous. Um, we've got kind of so we may tinker with that. I don't want to get too distracted at the moment. Let's go ahead and finish up the basics here. And before I get rid of this, let's go up here. Let's add a details page. Details helps if I actually select that. Details. And let's get over to our rough ink tool. Number 7 is probably good for that. And let's get a rectangle. What do we say? 10x? Because these are what, 15? So it's probably, yeah, we want 10, not 7. 10. And come to think of it, we probably want this on the walls section here. Just so that when we get in and add some other dimension to it, there's wiggle room for us to make mistakes. Okay, so there's our 10. Now the details. Let's add our 7. And we'll come in here, kind of use our crosshairs to orient ourselves to this. Give ourselves roughly the same kind of dimensions there. Let's make that a little bit cleaner. There we go. That's marginally better. And then our line tool, just give ourselves some sloping lines to suggest now that I put this in here, it occurs to me that the elevator goes up from here as opposed to down. You know what? Doesn't matter for the moment. We'll just put like a gravelly bottom here, so maybe this is where the elevator fits, the elevator base fits in, as opposed to here, which we probably need to put a black space in. Let's go ahead, or maybe a halftone space or something like that. Maybe we want something like that we're going to kind of fill this in. It's 25 on here. Let's take this over to put that in the hatching. Kind of we'll erase what we need to in here, but yeah, something along those lines. Let's get that eraser down. Clean that up. Yeah. I don't know if I like that halftone. Let's just try black. Let's try a fill tool. Well, I guess let's just kind of paint this in. So let's get back up here and let's get this guy a little bit. Oh, we don't need that big. Yeah, let's kind of give ourselves a black hole here. Yeah, black's probably the way to go. I don't know. Sometimes I don't really like to just put swaths of black in here, but you know, it is a pit. It does go down to the very bottom. And I'll need to go back in and clean that up. That's always frustrating. Okay. So let's kind of come in here and get that edge going. And that's pretty clean. Let's make that a little smaller just to give ourselves a little more control. Get that going. Yeah. I mean, theoretically, we could use like we could use our shadow layer to create a greater, to kind of fill that in. But putting that black space in there, putting a much darker color helps signify that it kind of goes into darkness, goes to a different level. Oh, I forgot the hatching right there. See, things to pay attention to. All right. Where's our hatching tool? Right here. And we want this to be what? Is there 50? So let's see. 50. All right. We turned off pen tip sensitivity, so let's just kind of trace that in. There we go. Cool. All right. We'll find other stuff as we audit this out later in the process. We're certainly not done with our maps by any stretch of the imagination, but we're getting to the point where it's time to very soon jump back to the to our adventure document to start kind of populating these out. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's add our shadow layer here. It's going to be shadow. Again, drop that opacity down to what, 25% is what we had. So we're using the other one. Yeah, 25%. Sometimes I will end up using a third, like 33%. It really just depends. Depends on how deep and dark I want everything to be. So let's make this guy a 20. Again, I'm using this kind of this charcoal rock soft brush here, and coming in with our multi-line tool to just add some some shadow elements, just as we did before. What the? Why didn't that work? Okay, what's going on here? Let's turn that pen sensitivity. What's happening? Opacity, Walter. Put that up above everything else. Let's see. That's problematic. What is going on with that? Let's get this all the way up. So we clearly can do stuff. So let's, yeah, because that's working. So what is going on with this bad boy? Okay. Bizarre. All right. Not entirely sure what the hell I changed there. So, okay. I think we got this now. So, yeah. So, using our multi-line tool like we did before. There we go. That's going in. Weird. Okay. So, yeah, we're just doing the left and the underside of any top lines there. I should say the right side of our lines, and then the underside of our lines. So let's come all the way down here. And yeah, we'll come here, here, and here. Should click. Cool. It's a little bit better. All right. Yeah, just working through this just like we did before. This won't take as long with our interior here because we don't have as many. We don't have as many straight lines, as it were, in this. We're gonna have some more organic ones, and I will show you how I handle those. The organic ones are a little harder to shade in, but only marginally so. And yeah, so doing kind of our filler work here. Okay. So I guess while we're doing this, we can kind of talk about my ideas for the ghoul encounter in the mines. As we've kind of discussed previously, the idea is to have this encounter where um, the characters are kind of hunted through the mines, where they are having to um, search for that key while being hounded by this pack of hungry ghouls. And the thought process there is that it. Oh, sorry, sidetrack here. If we wanted to make this kind of stand, maybe we want to make this kind of stick out. So it's looks maybe suggests that my chef goes up. No, because if we wanted to do that, what we could do is we could do, this right here, right? We could say make that, and then all of a sudden, with the sketch layer gone, that looks more like it's sticking up out of the page because of where the shadows fall in relation to these other lines, than if we do the other. But I don't know what benefit making it stick out would be. So let's close this anyway, and we'll shade it as normal. So it's a little bit of an indentation. And maybe we go back later and we change that. I don't know. We'll see. But for the moment, it's good enough. Ooh, I don't like how that one's so far out. Let's go ahead and erase this. Brush tool. What? There we go. I'm struggling today, man. Tell you what. Okay, so what I was thinking for the ghouls is that we want this to be an encounter where the characters are really kind of having to strategize, and the intent is not for them to just have this showdown with the ghouls. The idea is for them to have to kind of run and hide and strategically work their way through these mines looking for this key, while avoiding the ghouls, or avoiding a direct confrontation with the strength of the pack. And so I think we might want to mix it up so that it's less of just like a pack of three and more of a much larger pack, but that they're much more spread out through here. And so probably what we'll do when we get into the main document is we'll create sort of these subsections within this mine area where we can make a few quick notes about what's populated there and how this network all kind of works together. So, in the meantime, though, let's go ahead and get these shadows knocked out. All right, so we're in this organic area here. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this pen sensitivity so that I get this consistently thick, consistently opaque line, which is really what I want for it to kind of all come together. But really, all I'm doing is just working in segments and tracing the same, general structure of the line work here. And this is a little bit art as opposed to science, right? Because we're having to kind of use our best judgment on what counts as, the right and underside of a line. Because we could get very nitpicky about all of this, but it doesn't necessarily add much to our endeavor to do that. And again, it's all about cost versus reward for this. So, like, for example, I'm kind of going to peter my line out here. And you notice I kind of go over the edge. I'm just going to come in with the eraser tool and get rid of that. Because now we're kind of, this sort of to me is becoming kind of the upper side of a line, right? As it kind of curves down. And here it re-engages and becomes more of that, yeah, more of that right side of the line, as far as I see it. And again, kind of come in above, just kind of shave and adjust as I go. Now, if I'd use pen sensitivity, I could be a little more precise in the thickness of this, but it would also affect the opacity, which is not what I want, because then you're going to get places that don't look evenly in shadow. And perhaps if you're a better artist than I am, that is something that you can work with. But we're keeping this low barrier to entry, right? So we're keeping this a simple tool set to use. Certainly room to improve upon your skills, as there are as always room to improve. So, but yeah, so just kind of coloring this in, just giving ourselves a hint of depth to this. That when we zoom out, we'll make this a much clearer and a nicer looking map. So, but yeah. So, but yeah, the mine level or the mine segment of this level takes up a big chunk of the map, which means I think it really is worthwhile spending a little time trying to make it a very dynamic component of what we're doing here. A place where we kind of populate it with a bunch of things that the characters can interact with, and then leave it, kind of keep it as a spot that they can um, where they can make a lot of open-ended decisions, uh, therefore making it a much more dynamic element, something that they can use in a very free form sort of way, and so too can the ghouls, because it's going to feel a lot tenser, right? If they can make a lot of decisions in this place. One of the things that I think people forget sometimes with, especially in horror moments, in places in the story that are supposed to be scary, and I use horror lightly there, right? Because not everybody's playing a horror game, but there might be scary moments, right? Is a lot of that fear comes from choice. Um, when you watch like a horror movie and you're not terribly frightened, a lot of the times, it may just be that you don't find that subject matter terribly frightening, but to some extent, it comes from the characters making decisions that you wouldn't have made yourself, right? So that gives you this sense of emotional safety, because they're just being idiots, right? They're doing dumb things, and it's resulting in them being in this terrible, terrible situation, right? So, but if you give your players lots of choice in these tense, scary moments where they can really choose their own path, it makes the moments where the evil catches up with them, where the scary parts catch up with them, that much more terrifying, because they made all these decisions. They did exactly what they would do, and it led them down this dark path. And so, really, we want to make this mine a very sandboxy area, I think, and just give ourselves tools to leverage and play with while the characters muck about. So, we're going to build that into our adventure. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of kind of working on this, working on the map kind of halfway through, is we have a little bit of, we have an idea of what we want, so we have a little guidance, but we also have the opportunity to still go back and change and update and add things in the adventure without us being so far along that we're so reticent to make any changes. Because there's a certain inertia to writing, right? So when you're writing an adventure, when you if you wait till the very end to do something like create the map, well, you've already kind of got the whole darn thing put together, and that makes it a lot harder for you to psychologically go back and make big sweeping changes because now you've got to change so much. It means there's all of a sudden so much more work to do, and there's this urge to just kind of live with whatever it is that you have, um, which sometimes can be a good thing. It can force you to kind of think outside the box and come up with ideas and reasons and strategies that you might not have come up before. But sometimes when you come up with a much better way of doing something, it gives you almost this motivation to ignore it, to do things the a way that's less fun, that's less enjoyable for everyone, especially for your characters, because because it's going to take so much more work to rewrite and to get rid of so many of the elements of the things that you spent so much time working on. So that's why I like to kind of use this as a moment to kind of step back during the creative process, let my brain work at this adventure from a different direction. Um, I think it's a worthwhile practice to do that, to give yourself that kind of creative space so that you don't give up. Well, so one, you give yourself the place to come up with other ideas and look at this from a different angle, but you also give yourself um, the helps give yourself the license to to go back and redo certain elements. Now, thankfully, in our version of this, we didn't put a whole lot into this section of our mine layer just yet. In terms of our text, we have the ghoul encounter. We've got a few rough notes in there, but we have not put a ton of stuff in there just yet, which is good. It means we're not going to have as much to kind of redo. But we're still going to want to go in and edit some things as we go. And that's okay. Writing is just one part of an adventure. Editing is another part and an equally important element. Well, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time in this live stream going through the minutia of the editing process because it's it can be tedious and it can take a lot of time, and it's not even as visually kind of cathartic to watch as just watching me draw lines in here, right? Like you can kind of put you could kind of put this on and do something else while you kind of listen to me explain the process and occasionally look back to kind of see what I'm doing just to kind of get the vibe of this. But with the editing, it's a much more intensive, sometimes much more frustrating part of the process. And while you should always edit your work, when you're writing for yourself, you don't have to do as deep of edits. So I'll probably I will definitely talk about how to kind of go about that and my strategy for doing that. And I'll probably demo a little bit of it on here just so you kind of see what I mean. And so when you sit down to edit your own stuff, you have that skill set available to you, or that workflow available to you. But I'm not going to make you sit with me while I edit our whole adventure document top to bottom, especially doing the deep edit that I'll do before I publish this and post it for you guys to enjoy. That's just that'll just be mind-numbing. Unless, of course, that's something that you guys really, really, really want to see. In which case, let me know in the comments, and I can always change my plan on that. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you can see where this isn't quite as putting the shadow in these organic lines isn't quite as easy as putting them in our more straight line rooms. I mean, you could certainly be a little rougher about it than I am. If you haven't noticed, I can be just a little bit of a perfectionist on some of this stuff. But it also, you know, it still goes pretty quickly. So, the hardest part is not forgetting sections as you work through, especially on things that flow a little less logically than uh, than man-made, elf-made rooms. I keep trying to come up with a good word to describe all of all of sentience in a game like D&D, right? Where IRL we have the term humanity, right? Kind of encompasses everything that it means to be human. But since human is a origin or a species or a race or whatever, however you choose to acknowledge it, categorize it in your particular vein of fantasy, it doesn't. That wording doesn't quite, the word humanity doesn't quite sum up everybody's experience. It doesn't of all the different races or origins or species or what have you. Trying to use the term species more often. I think it fits a little bit better, but I grew up in the old system, and so race for elves and dwarves and that kind of deal will occasionally slip into my vernacular. Old habits. But I'm trying to come up with keep trying to come up with sort of an all-encompassing term. And the only thing I can really come up with is all of mortal kind. And I don't know always how I feel about that. Especially if you kind of view elves as long-lived as they are. They're not immortal, but man, they're darn close. Which I have to admit, I'm not. I know that that's kind of it's kind of a trope of fantasy. Elves and dwarves living for these impossible amounts of time. But I'm, to be honest with you, not a huge fan of that. I think that leads. That just gives like one other reason for a separation between the species. I think in fantasy stories where if you have these elves that live for hundreds of years and humans that live for like maybe 100, um, it starts to make sense why you kind of end up with these fantasy stories where it's like this is a human civilization and this is an elven civilization, and the two don't trust each other, because well, why would they? When you have an elven society to whom humans appear as children because they live a quarter of their lifespan. I mean, think about it. Even in our current society, just the frustration between generations that we see. I mean, can you imagine that on a colossal societal scale? That would be the same kind of strife that we'd get between elves and humans, who have these enormous differentiations in terms of time and what constitutes a long time or a long life, or even what constitutes significant experience at that point. Um, but if you then say, well, maybe they all live about the same amount of time, whether that's an unusually long life of multiple centuries or whether that's just a kind of typically human lifespan of a century. well, then I think you set yourself up in a place where you can have a more cosmopolitan world, or I should say, a more easily cosmopolitan world, because you don't have to overcome some of those logical some of those logical issues. Not that you need to necessarily bother with some of those logical issues at your table. I mean, let's be honest. One of the cool things about fantasy is you can just go, it's not a problem. People here don't care. You know, that's not a thing here. Nobody thinks about it. Everybody else's age here. They just coexist. Uh, you could absolutely do that, and there's nothing wrong with that, so long as your players are buying into that as well. Um, but things that I think about. So we're getting to the home stretch of our shadow here. So let's continue working down here. Right. Okay. But yeah, so if you've got a good term for, you know, all of humanity, when humanity also involves elves and dwarves and half orcs and tieflings and all that kind of stuff, I would love to hear it. Um, oh, that's okay. All right. Following the curves here again. Yeah. So as I'm kind of working through this, I'm thinking about sort of these choke points, right? Like places where the characters could get themselves boxed in. Because we don't necessarily want to create the kind of experience we're trying to create here. We don't necessarily want to create places where the characters can't get out. Although, one of the things that makes maze-like structures maze-like is the possibility of dead ends, where now you must turn around and face the things behind you. Um, we want to have a balanced amount of those compared to what uh, compared to kind of these loops and multiple points of entry and exit. At the same time, we don't want to leave all of those as just open spaces, or else we're going to end up in this place where players really just have to outrun uh, our ghouls. The characters just have to keep moving to stay ahead of them, and they don't actually have to put any thought into their strategy for doing so. Um, we want them to think in here. We want them to have to make decisions as opposed to just kind of doing a, Benny Hall kind of deal where they just kind of, run around this, sort of run around this this central piece over and over and over again with ghouls chasing them. We want there to be a little more than that to it. So as I'm working my way through, I'm keeping in mind places where we might throw up soft barriers. By soft barriers, I mean places that aren't necessarily blocked off. They can get through them, but there's a cost to get through them. And that's what I've had in mind from the beginning in terms of this plague, is that um, this disease, this cackle fever that pervades the burg, offers some of these soft barriers, places where the characters can absolutely 100% get through, but they risk infection. Um, so they have to make choices. They have to decide what, you know, what kind of risk they're willing to accept in any given moment, which I think will make the chase through here more dynamic. Okay. You know, it occurs to me that once we have this adventure completed, it might be fun to get some of you all together and play it. Um, yeah, let me know if that sounds interesting to you. We can, do a fan playthrough of the adventure. Do it, and then just kind of record the audio, put it out on the channel for everybody to enjoy. Why not? If that's something you all would be interested in. Otherwise, I'll conscript some of my friends to it. Some of my players. Okay. Let's see. Something you might notice here is I'm not worrying too much about the consistency of the line thickness everywhere. I mean, I am a little bit, but I'm not getting too wrapped around the axle about it. Because since these are very organic lines, and these are cave walls, right? They're going to have some variation in their shape naturally, which can be represented in can explain some of the inconsistency in our in the thickness of our shadows in certain places. So nothing wrong with that. Now, I mean, as we zoom out, we may find that there are places that just don't look quite right, and we'll go back in and we will tweak them. But we don't have to get too meticulous about this. Can be a certain roughness to what we do. Yeah, we're going to say that's all the right side of the line. Why not? And you'll find too that, once we kind of zoom out here, we can kind of spot check ourselves and see what places where we're going to want to make some edits and some changes and modify a few bits and pieces. So I think we're just about at a place where we can start doing some of that. So let's zoom out. Let's see what we got. Let's see how this looks. Okay. That right there, I want to tweak a little bit. We need some line work there too. Okay, so this one right here just feels a little heavy to me, so I'm just gonna shave it down a little bit. Give it kind of a little less prominence and weight here. Okay, if we zoom out, yeah, I like that. I like that better. So. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I need to do a little line weight here. Let that kind of taper off into nothing there. And I need to do a little bit right there, I think. Kind of get that going on here. Okay, that there. Curve that down just a little bit. Cool. Okay, and zoom out. Yeah, I think we've got a reasonable amount of depth here. for what we're looking for. Okay, that took a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. Let's, yeah, okay. So let's get back to that details pane here. Actually, let's pop up our sketch layer again. And let's add some. Let's sketch out some places where maybe we want some veins of this gas to come through. Because the way that I imagine it, I don't know. Maybe you've seen The Lion King, maybe you haven't. I don't know, but you know, there's that I think the song's about "Be Prepared," right? Where you've got Scar and the hyena singing, and they've got all those, you know, gas vents and geysers kind of coming off, and you get that you know, those curtains of gas and those explosions, and there's all the kind of greens and purples in there. That is in my mind sort of how I picture places of this mine here. And so I'm going to kind of come through, and I want to just kind of sketch out for myself those elements. So I'm going to turn that pen pressure button back on here and just kind of sketch out for myself kind of where those would be. Play around with maybe how I want to draw those. Because we don't want them to be true pits, but at the same time, we want that to be there to be kind of a, you know, there'd be a kind of a feel to them where, you know, we can definitely tell what they are. So we don't want to overwork them. So maybe something like that. Maybe. I'll think about how I like it. We'll play with it a couple of spots, but at least gives us an idea of we want one here. So, you know, what I should do is let's take a look at kind of our loops, right? So we've got an entry point here, we've got an entry point here. You know, so it's reasonable for the characters to come this way and to end up, you know, in this place where it's a dead end unless they come through here, giving us a gas vent. You know, the immediate impulse might be to then put another one here, but then that just kind of becomes this this entirely blocked off place. I don't know that that adds much to it, so we'll kind of balance that. But let's come up here. This one has a bunch of natural dead ends, so I don't think we need a gas vent there. But I think we definitely need one here. Maybe, yeah. Maybe, yeah. We probably need one here. Maybe it's, you know, maybe we don't need to do an honest crag. Maybe we just kind of do this. We just kind of do this jagged, you know, kind of snaking crack line, right? You know, maybe we'll compare a couple different styles. So we got one there. You know, we don't want these to be everywhere that they go, but we definitely want this to kind of segment stuff up. So we can kind of access through here, maybe, maybe in this spot here, instead of just like a curtain of this, right? Because these have kind of been these like, oh, they fill up the whole space, you've got to go through it. Maybe this one has, you know, more of those kind of snaking, branching, crack structures that erupt intermittently. You know, and so how we might kind of do this in game with this kind of spider web series of cracks is that when the players move through, or the characters move through this space here, they don't automatically run through, you know, one of these bursts of gas. Maybe they, Yeah, maybe we do something like, they move through the space. We roll a 1d4 every time they, while they're in, every time they move and they're in that area, or every turn that they're in that area, or something like that. Roll a 1d4, and then on a roll of one, then they get caught up in one of these effects, sort of showing how unpredictable they are as the gas kind of pumps through. Um, you know, we could do something like that that kind of pervades the whole thing if we wanted to do that. Um, and that might add a level of complexity to this, or add a level of randomness to this. But I don't know that we want that to be completely random. Plus, that's a lot of die rolls for every time you move anywhere in here. Um, you have that potential, but having a mechanic for that would allow us to kind of create more variable pockets. And so we have a couple like guaranteed curtains, right, where they've got the fissure, um, and and so maybe that's not what goes here. Then maybe we have a more branching fissure kind of comes in here. You know, Again, we're brainstorming here. That's why we have our sketch layer. We know we need kind of want something here, but maybe we have a fissure that does one of these things, right? So we've got something that snakes, and we get kind of that broad detail in. Get some of that line, get some of that simple line work going. Just experiment with this, just to give it a little bit of visual appeal. We don't want to spend too much time drawing this out. No, we don't necessarily have to spend too much time drawing it out. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, maybe something like that. That's more of a kind of guaranteed spot here. And then we can put kind of these little pocket, geysers in various places, throughout. Maybe we have kind of clusters of them in different patches. Think about that. Kind of line of them that kind of run up in some of these areas, make them a little more dynamic, a little more variable, and add some, some danger to moving through certain parts of this, right? Where we're kind of get these general zones. Just kind of, we're playing with some of the sketchy details of this, right, to kind of figure out how we want to draw this. But at the same time, just kind of circling those areas gives you an idea of kind of how they're going to lay out across this, because we do want them to be scattered throughout, but we don't want them to overwhelm the environment. We want there to be some variability, so it's not just kind of a given that they're going to run across those things. They've got to make choices to do that. So to that end, let's pick a different color here real quick. And let's just kind of think about how we might break this up for our our Notion document. So we kind of have, big zone here. This is a segment, seems to me, and there's nothing that I'm really using that's going, oh, this defines a segment. I'm just kind of looking at these things and how they just kind of fall in with my eye in terms of how they kind of connect with one another. These are kind of places. This is the entryway. It probably counts as a place, but that they kind of connect to one another. And just kind of seem kind of the natural segments of this place. So, this is stuff that I would, for my map, for my map key, when we go back to our Notion document, I would just kind of give myself a couple general notes, or a couple general markers, I should say, about A, B, C, D, and E, where I, don't have these, truly keyed to the map yet, but I kind of give myself some places to think about in terms of the overall locale, right? So we kind of have 5 segments to this, which is useful. So, with that in mind, let's very quickly get back to our Notion document. Let's go to our mind tunnels here, and let's give ourselves a couple. Let's go ahead and start defining what those areas are. What level is this? What this is heading 2? All right, so we're gonna make a heading 3. 3, and we're gonna say tunnels section A, D, tunnels section B, D. Let's make use of the magic of copy and paste. And say C, B, D, TBD, E, TBD. Yeah, so because we don't know what's going to go in each of these yet, but we can put the structure in here so we can start kind of filling it out piecemeal. For example, looking at this, it looks like there's sort of these gas hazards in 3 of these, which is probably a pretty good setup here. We've got gas hazards in B, D, and E. Okay, let's start with that. It kind of fits with our rule of thirds anyway, which is always a good rule of thumb. Human beings love things in groups of 3. It just works for our brain somehow. Well, proof of that, read literally any story ever. Okay, so say TBD, and then we're going to say gas hazard. TBD. And control copy. And I've already forgotten what numbers I said. I said B, D, and E. Got it. Okay. I mean, yeah, we could say that's in C, but this seems more like that's kind of part of that group. So we're going to go with that. And again, there's really no, there's no hard and fast rule about how to organize this. A lot of this is going to be feel, but when in doubt, pick 3 of something. You can always modify or change that as you go, but it's a good starting place. So the gas hazards in these spots are going to have a lot of kind of the same deal, right? While that may feel repetitive when you're just kind of looking at it, on a sheet of paper, it will not play repetitively. It'll actually make it easier for you to play and easier for the players to start to understand and to more accurately calculate the risks, right? So down in this level, repetition can be very good because we're trying to get them to make strategic decisions, which means that the first time they encounter something, they're going to have no idea what the risk is. How dangerous is it? And so just kind of rolling the dice, flipping a coin and going, well, risk it or don't. But the second, third time they encounter something, they start to notice patterns. They start to get a more accurate assessment of how dangerous something is, which feeds into their tactical understanding, which means that they can make, it gives them a stronger foundation to make these sorts of choices that we want them to make, right? We want them to make a clear distinction about whether or not it's more dangerous for them to face the ghouls or more dangerous for them to run through, this infectious gas. So having a little bit of that repetition in there gives them that ability. If we change everything up on them all the time, they have no foundation. They have no way of making a decision based on anything other than the flip of a coin, right? which is fun sometimes, but less fun than you might think, right? Um, it's hard for them to adapt if they never have any foundation from which to adapt to. Now, it doesn't look like we've set a DC or anything like that, but let's check out Cackle Fever and kind of see what they've got. DC 13. Cool. So let's go with that. No reason to reinvent the wheel. So gas hazards, we'll say something like breathing creatures pass through a gas hazard must make a DC 13 con save or attract Cackle Fever. And we'll put another link to that here. Just to make our lives simpler when we go run this game. Link, Cackle Fever, Wunderbar. Okay, and so we're going to copy and paste this throughout. And then when we go back through, we'll put notes about triggering, right? That's how we'll vary this, is that some of these, one or two of these will be a curtain. Some of these may be triggered on timing. Maybe they're all triggered on timing. That might, that being that sort of roll of a 1d4. All of that might be more interesting to us. And so instead of varying the mechanic in terms of what happens, what kind of dangers they encounter, we will vary up the consistency of it. Especially if these are kind of if we decide that the gas hazards are more of a variable thing, right? Like coming back to that Lion King analogy where they come in bursts and there's a timing and a rhythm to it to some degree. And maybe that's a complicated timing. Maybe that's a very complicated rhythm. But theoretically, savvy NPC or savvy characters might be able to observe that timing and make a best guess of when they can move through. And maybe that gives them advantage on the roll, meaning that if we're rolling a 1d4 on a 1, they get hit with a blast of this infectious gas. Well, maybe we roll 2d4 and we take the higher of the two numbers, or maybe there's some sort of check that we require for them to calculate the timing. But the point is, we're giving them things that they can interact with and use to make serious strategic decisions that give them more agency and also affect the outcome of the overall encounter. All right, so with that, I think that we are kind of at our time here. The map took more time than I was thinking it was going to take, and so we didn't get as deep into working on our adventure key again and filling out some of this empty space that's in here. So that's what we'll do next week. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video or you've been enjoying my content, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon so that you never miss a video. And I will see you guys for our next live. If you're watching in real time, this coming Saturday. So that's going to be the 20th of July. And yeah, same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you then.